Thank you so much for watching Landumc Goes There. Please subscribe and hit the like button and the bell notification button. Planes, Trains, and Automobiles is a 1987 American comedy film that was written, produced, and directed by John Hughes. It stars Steve Martin and John Candy in the lead roles. The storyline goes that easily excitable Neil Page, played by Steve Martin, is somewhat of a control freak. He's trying to get home to Chicago to spend Thanksgiving with his wife and kids. His flight is rerouted to a distant city in Kansas because of a freak snowstorm. His sanity begins to fray. Worse yet, he is forced to bunk up with the talkative Del Griffith, played by John Candy, who he finds extremely annoying. Together, they must overcome the insanity of holiday travel to reach their intended destination. John Hughes has said in interviews that he was inspired to write the film's story after he experienced a flight from New York to Chicago. That flight was diverted to Wichita, Kansas, taking him numerous days to finally get home. He also wrote the first draft of the screenplay in 3 days. His average writing time for a screenplay in those days was about 3 to 5 days. And after the initial writing, he would usually do about 20 or so rewrites to the script. One of the most famous scenes in the film is the marathon car rental scene, and that takes exactly 1 minute on screen from the time Steve Martin starts his tirade to the time the attendant ends the scene. In that 60 seconds, the F word is used 19 times. This movie would have easily been rated PG or PG-13 if it weren't for that one scene. Edie McClurg plays the role of the St. Louis rental car agent, and that role was really partially improvised by her. Hughes had told her to simply fake a phone conversation with someone about Thanksgiving plans. All of this while Steve Martin remains waiting in the line, staring at her to finish up the conversation. She came up with the idea to act like she was speaking with her sister about who was going to make what at the dinner, and she basically says, "You know I can't cook." The director asked her how she was able to come up with those lines so quickly, and she replied that she just drew upon her own life experiences. Director John Hughes was known for staging improvisational moments for his actors in order to capture a genuine reaction. Since he was not satisfied with the Owen scene introductions after several takes that he did, he privately instructed Dylan Baker, who played Owen, to wipe spit on his right hand just before shaking hands with Neil Page. Steve Martin was not expecting this at all, thus his disgusted reaction to shaking Baker's saliva-filled hand. The film crew reportedly exploded in laughter as Martin ran off the set to wash his hands immediately following this encounter. Hughes ended up getting the reaction that he needed, and the footage was kept in the film. The director shot over 600,000 feet of film for this movie, almost twice the industry average. Paul Hirsch, who helped edit the film along with John Hughes, trimmed it down to about 2 hours. This version was then test screened, and they probably used a lot of the edits for the trailers of the film, which is why they show a lot of deleted scenes. The film was then edited again down to 1 hour and 33 minutes for its final theatrical release. That 2-hour version that they originally did for the test audiences does exist, but nobody seems to know where it's at now. John Hughes' original choice for the train station and the platform was a station that was about 60 miles south of Chicago. The cast and crew were in this town for about a week, waiting for the weather to get cold enough so that they could make snow. The cast and crew traveled all over the place, from the Midwest to the East Coast and back in search of snow for many of the scenes in the film, which all seemed to melt as soon as they arrived. It's said that this shoot was completely hellish for everybody that worked on it, and the fact that John Hughes was grumpy the whole time didn't help it at all, and it made matters worse. Elton John and lyricist Gary Osborne were commissioned to compose the theme song for the movie. They had nearly completed writing it when, just 2 days before they were going to record it, Paramount Pictures issued a last-minute demand that the original songmaster become property of the studio. Elton's record company, Polygram, would not allow this, as that he was under contractual obligations to give Polygram rights to all his released music. The studio and Polygram could not reach a deal, which led to both composers withdrawing from the project. Paramount instead opted to license Paul Young's "Every Time You Go Away" as the movie's theme song. Elton John's original theme song was never recorded at all. Steve Martin has talked numerous times in interviews about his late co-star John Candy and the similarities that he really has with his character of Dell. He states that he was a very sweet guy, very sweet, always being very nice and polite, but he felt like he could tell that he kind of had a little broken heart inside him. John Hughes originally wanted Tom Hanks for the role of Neil Page and John Travolta for the role of Del Griffith. Somehow this just doesn't seem right, and I'm so glad it didn't work out. Hanks was unavailable since he was busy shooting the movie Big, and Paramount executives didn't want Travolta in the movie because they considered him box office poison at the time. Now, as we talked earlier, one of the most iconic scenes in the film is the one at the rental car counter. Edie McClurg plays the role as the counter agent, and she's been in quite a few feature films and on TV as well. She has a very recognizable face and voice, but she's struggling a lot right now. She's been victimized by a self-described long-term friend who attempted to take her out of the state of California and marry her, despite the fact that she suffers from dementia and lacked the mental capacity to make those kind of decisions. Her conservator got protection from a judge to stop this alleged marriage plan. And it's also been thought that there probably has been some sexual assaulting that's happened during the course of his involvement with her. It's such a shame to see this lovely actress being taken advantage of in such a despicable way. Take a look back at this classic John Hughes movie. It's always a blast. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll continue to chase the classics.